yet another video game battle with me, Zookstar, where I take two games that have similarities and compare them to each other and decide at the end which do I think is better. So without hesitation, let's bring out tonight's competitors! Crash Twinsanity vs Spyro A Hero's Tale. Now, unlike Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex and Spyro Into the Dragonfly that barely made any changes from their predecessors, these two games on the other hand changed a lot of things in their series that made them more different from their predecessors than being similar. This was mainly because both Crash and Spyro were abandoned by Universal Studios, and both of the series were bought by Traveller's Tales and Sierra. The question is, which of these two games that were the last in their original series before becoming rebooted later on in the future is better? Let's find out as we compare Crash Twinsanity to Spyro A Hero's Tale. Let's start with the usual, the story. Crash Twinsanity's story this time is a little more detailed and developed than the other Crash games. Both Crash and Cortex find each other having to work together to stop a pair of mutated space pirates from destroying their own dimension. The story for this game this time has a slapstick feel to it, which does suit well for a Crash Bandicoot game. Spyro A Hero's Tale story was something about an evil dragon named Red who returned from exile and starts poisoning the Dark Realms with dark gems with the help of the villain from the first game, Nasty Narc. So now Spyro goes on another quest to destroy the Dark Gems and defeat Red. If you ask me what similarities with these games have, it would have to be that the stories are pretty lame. But I have to say Crash Twinsanity's story is definitely more entertaining than Spyro A Hero's Tale story, mainly because of its slapstick feel and sense of humour for a platformer, and Spyro A Hero's Tale story was just a kiddie fantasy story. So let's look in depth with the designs. Crash Twinsanity's designs are a little disappointing because Wrath of Cortex had some stunning visuals for its time in 2001, and here in Twinsanity it's kinda lacking, but yet most of the levels in the game do reminisce a lot of levels from the other Crash games. For the first time, the levels are no longer linear and now have hub worlds with no portals to jump through, where you can freely explore whenever you like. Spyro A Hero's Tale's designs are really cartoony, and they remind me a lot of Disney movies like Aladdin or The Little Mermaid. You still go through fantasy and fairy tale like levels as usual. If you ask me, the levels remind me a lot of the levels from Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy, so they could be inspired or something. This one's a tie for me because Crash Twinsanity's level designs had a lot of wacky places to explore, and Spyro A Hero's Tale's level designs are too colourful yet still decent to look at, so this is a draw for me. Now let's get to the music. Both games have pretty weak and pretty forgettable soundtracks compared to their predecessors. However, the only difference is that Crash Twinsanity's soundtrack is more catchier. The music was performed by band Spiralmouth, and while some songs were lacking, other songs were definitely fun to listen to, like this one. Spyro A Hero's Tale soundtrack, I have to say the only ones I ever liked were the opening theme and the music of the second level. As for the rest, I thought they were average at best, but the one I found uninspiring was the music of the Cloudy Domain level. Seriously, I thought Spyro A Hero's Tale soundtrack was a dud compared to the music made by Stuart Copeland in the last four games. Crash Twinsanity's soundtrack was definitely more catchier and enjoyable than Spyro A Hero's Tale, but if I had a problem with both soundtracks, I would have to say that they are lacking on being memorable, but that's besides the point, so moving on to the boss battles. Another thing I find lacking in both games is that both games suffer from having less epic and less memorable boss fights. Crash Twinsanity's bosses were pretty random, but you were still fighting the same characters as before, like Dr. Engine and Dr. Entropy, but there are still some new characters to become face to face with. Same goes for Spyro A Hero's Tale. Nasty Narc returns as a boss too, and later on you'll battle a giant sea witch and battle Red twice near the end of the game. I have to say Crash Twinsanity's bosses were pretty easy at first, but did become more difficult as you progress. They also still had that slapstick feel to it, which made it more fun. Spyro Heroes Tales bosses were pretty challenging, but still felt boring to fight in comparison to the likes of Twinsanity's bosses, and I did like the final boss in Twinsanity more than the final boss in the Hero's Tale. Why is Red just standing there? Come on, try and hit me! Man, he's such a retard. So you can tell by now that Twinsanity has the better boss fights over Hero's Tales. And now we come to the last category, gameplay. Crash Twinsanity's gameplay differs from the other Crash games as it plays in a more free-roaming style, but there are still some levels that remain linear like before. This means that the main objective is now just going through the game without having to search for any collectibles to progress. This might have felt more of an action-adventure, but this game still remains as a platformer at heart. Instead of obtaining gems by smashing all of the boxes in the level, gems are now earned by finding them in a hidden spot or in a place that you need to have a lot of patience in order to succeed. Crash still has his old moves from before, like jump, double jump, spin, slide, etc. But now new to the series is that he can use Cortex as a weapon for various situations, like spinning him, using him as a hammer, throwing him across gaps to activate switches, and even ride on him down slopes. You know, this game kinda reminds me of Whiplash because of its slapstick-like gameplay. There are also times when you have to protect Cortex by making sure everything in his path is safe for him to run on. Speaking of which, Cortex becomes a playable character throughout the game, whose gameplay is basically a shooter where he can take out more enemies than Crash can, but can't jump as high as Crash. Also, Nina Cortex, who is Cortex's niece and the new character introduced, is also a playable character whose gameplay is kinda similar to Crash's, except she can climb walls and swing over gaps. If there are a few negatives I feel about this game, it would have to be that it's way too short and that the hit detection is too stiff in this game. But other than that, out of all the new Crash games I dislike, the one I dislike the least is Crash Twinsanity, because it added something new while staying true to where it came from. Still, it's not the best in the series and there are some parts in the game that could have been better. Spyro Heroes Tales gameplay is kinda like what Crash Twinsanity did, only with more differences. You still have hub worlds like before, but there are no portals this time and gems are no longer needed to complete the game 100%. Instead, you'll often use the gems to buy items from Moneybags' shop like lockpicks, new power-ups, etc. Like Crash, Spyro still has his old moves like gliding, fire breathing, charging, head bashing and more, though after defeating each boss, Spyro will gain a new breath element like the electric breath, the water breath and the ice breath. The main objective of the game is to destroy all of the dark gems by head bashing them, but they also have other collectibles like dragon eggs from Spyro 3 and light gems. Sometimes collecting light gems will become more important because there are some hidden areas that can only be accessed if you have a certain amount of light gems. Dragon eggs and light gems can be earned by finding them in a spot or completing a small minigame, but to be honest, the minigames in this game are not as fun nor as challenging as the ones in the first three games. Like Twinsanity, A Hero's Tale also has playable characters, just like in Spyro 3, though I have to admit these characters are not as fun to play as the ones in Spyro 3. The only decent character to play as is Hunter, because he has acrobatic moves which made it more enjoyable. Sergeant Bird's gameplay was just like the Speedways from the previous games, but it felt like a chore to do. Blink's gameplay felt bland and repetitive, but the worst of all is Sparks, because his levels are way too tedious to go through. For the most part, I have to say A Hero's Tale's Dragon Eggs and Light Gems did feel more rewarding than Twinsanity's Hidden Gems, but both Twinsanity's and A Hero's Tale's character rosters had their pros and cons, so it's a hit or a miss. Since Twinsanity had more non-linear levels, there are a lot more collectibles to obtain and backtracking, but A Hero's Tale did suffer from more backtracking than Twinsanity did. Plus, Twinsanity did have much better voice acting than A Hero's Tale. The voices I hate in A Hero's Tale was the voice of that pink dragon Ember. God damn, she makes Amy Rose sound like Lara Croft.
Talk to the Dragon Elder to learn how to smash this gem. I know you'll do it, cause you like me.
Overall, I do prefer these games over Wrath of Cortex and Into the Dragonfly, but on choosing on which game is better, I have to say Crash Twinsanity, mainly because it was more funnier, enjoyable, and just a ride to go through. Spyro Hero's Tale isn't a horrible game, but there's so much in this game that I feel that could have been improved. So the winner is Crash Twinsanity. So that wraps up another video game battle, people. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next video.